Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Alexander Povetkin. Now, here's something I've really been wanting to talk about. A couple of days ago, there was a story on boxingscene.com, shout out to Boxing Scene, where it said Alexander Povetkin back in the good graces of the IBF. So I read through that, and according to his promoter, yes, he is back in the good graces and now is 13th on the IBF's top 15. So I thought, well, what's going on here? So if we just take a step back for a minute, Alexander Povetkin, twice in the past year, or just over a year, has popped dirty for pets. So in December, he was due to fight Berman Stavern. At that point, just before the fight, he tested positive for Osterine. So that fight was cancelled. That was for an interim title, and it would have determined who was to face Deontay Wilder. We since know that Berman Stavern is now going to be fighting Wilder at some point because he's the mandatory. Well, supposedly he's going to fight Wilder, but we have to see. So that fight was cancelled. He fought Dorper on short notice. Dorper didn't even have any boots. He just wore some sneakers in the ring, and he got knocked out in about 6 rounds. 6 months earlier, and I mean, there's a pretty small gap here. He tested positive for the banned substance meldonium prior to a showdown with WBC kingpin Deontay Wilder. So that fight, that was cancelled. And as we know, Wilder has subsequently won a judgment in court for millions of dollars. So, I mean, my question is in relation to the Stavern situation, because obviously that's the most recent indiscretion, well, what's changed? And if you have a quick search online, the only thing that you can actually find is by his promoter. So he's saying a number of things on Twitter and other places in the media. So Ryabinski, he's basically said that they're slowly starting to unwind everything that was happening. But the last I had heard, Povetkin was banned for a year and he'd been fined. I think it was a couple hundred grand, something like that. So the question is, well, what has happened? Because the sanctioning bodies haven't been saying anything, except all of a sudden, earlier this month, he was allowed to fight for a minor title for the WBO and the WBA. So I think he fought Rudenko and he sort of took care of him. That was his first fight back, since the Stavern incident. But what's going on? I mean, I haven't heard the WBC come out with anything on this. I mean, and this is the thing that, really peeves me off about boxing because there's all these things that happen with these sanctioning bodies, these behind the scenes deals and agreements, things get changed, overturned, and it's all behind closed doors, never sees the light of day. And then all of a sudden, he's fighting again, for example, in this case, and you're left sort of like, well, what happened? What did the test, was that, did the B sample or did another sample, did that clear him? Was there something wrong with the lab? Um, you can only fill that information vacuum with a couple of speculating thoughts. I mean, or in boxing, as we know, it's got a bad name and a bad reputation from things that have happened in the past. That a couple of notes change hand. I mean, remember, he is a big draw, and obviously with some of that Russian money, that is actually something that's not to be ignored. I mean, I think Wilder was about to get $5 million for that fight. I would really like to hear something from these sanctioning bodies, something credible. I went to the IBF website. They said that he was in the boxing scene story at 13 in the rankings, and indeed he was. On their site right now, you can go check it out. He is 13th. Hard to validate whether the WBO and WBA have done the same, but seemingly, if they've allowed him to fight for a couple of minor titles, he must be also back in their good graces. And perhaps the rankings I was looking at are not the most up-to-date rankings, so July mustn't have come out for them. So what's next? I mean, what's up with the WBC? I mean, surely they need to come out and lift the lid on this. This is, something that is shrouded and, appears like some sort of shady deal that's been sort of brokered behind closed doors. This is the stuff that gives boxing a bad name. One day a guy's out for doping, the next he's embraced with open arms. It leaves you speculating what the heck is going on. And, too often boxing fans have been burnt by these sanctioning bodies. And also promoters, they're often complicit. Really, it's a shocking situation. And I thought some of this sort of stuff was sort of left behind with the bad old days when these sorts of things happened all the time. Obviously, it's still happening. I mean, I don't know all the details in this case, but everyone's being pretty silent about this, except to say, well, he's allowed to fight and he's back in their rankings and yada yada yada. So, what is the future for Povetkin? Who's going to want to fight the guy? I mean, if you're going to have to go to his backyard, would you really take that? He's already popped dirty for 2 different PEDs in the last 2 fights. Twice. Do you want to be the third person to enter into that? I mean, I know that they said for this latest fight that he had that, the VADA testing was clear, but well, we know what happens in Russian labs. And I think there's a real problem here. His career, while he might have, relaunched it with his most recent fight, it's going to be hard to, I think, claw the way back to the top or closer to the top because of trust. People will not want to make a fight with him. Contenders, that is, guys that are on the brink of a world title, guys that have a chance to really lift up. You're probably going to get some of these high-level journeymen, taking a fight, and these keep busy fights. They'll get paid a bit more than maybe they otherwise would have. But who's going to want to fight the guy? You wouldn't take that fight. I wouldn't want to take that fight. I struggle to see how he's actually going to recover from this, let alone if we'll ever find out any information on it. Well, that's it from me. Like and subscribe. I'm out.